Assalamu alaikum students, my name is Asif and I am back with the lecture number 10 and part number 2. Today we have the topic lines from Ulysses, and in this lecture I am going to talk about the poem, what sort of poem we are going to study, and all the composition, how the poet has composed this poem I will tell you, and what is in it. And what we are going to study, what is the background of the poem, all the basic aspects of the poem I will discuss in this part number 2. Topic is lines from Ulysses. So let's begin with the introduction of the poem. Yes, my first point of the poem is it's a blank verse. It's a blank verse. What does it mean? What is the blank verse? Remember, try to recall the first lecture. I have taught you The 7 Ages of a Man by William Shakespeare, in which you have been understood and studied that what is blank verse. Blank verse is when you try to write without creating rhyming. Yes, rhyming. What is rhyming? When you try to compose the same sound, when you try to arise the same sound by giving the two words similar at the end of the lines. When you create rhyming, when you create same sounds at the end of the lines, that is called rhyming. But we don't have rhyming in this poem. It's a blank verse, and same like The 7 Ages of a Man. The second point is it's a dramatic monologue. What is dramatic monologue? You might have read dramas, you might have watched dramas on the televisions, so you are familiar with the name of drama. And what is drama? First let me tell you drama, and then I will tell you dramatic monologue. Whenever the drama is published or drama is on air, you just watch the drama, and they talk in such a way that they are talking to you. They talk in first persons. So whenever we are watching a video and we try to watch the person, he is talking directly to me. He is not trying to present himself or herself that he is something different from me. He tries to talk in front of everyone that he or she is directly talking to me. So this is called first person technique. When the person tells his or her story in his own words directly to you. Same, I am delivering lecture and I am talking to you. So there is no any other resource. I am not writing my words on the book. I am just talking to you. This is called first person technique. Whenever you talk to someone, this is called first person technique. And in dramas, the first person technique is followed. And dramatic monologue. What is dramatic monologue? Dramatic monologue is not basically a drama. Dramatic monologue is a poem. And what is the difference of dramatic monologue than other poems? It is the difference, the big difference is that the dramatic monologue written in first person, and usually dramatic monologue contains story. So we are going to read out a story. First, in the first lecture, we have studied The 7 Ages of a Man. In that lecture, we were not studying a story. But this poem contains a story, and someone is talking to you directly. If you remember those moments that you might have studied in the first year, the incident of the French camp. Last year, I have taught you the incident of the French camp by Robert Browning. In this poem, that was also containing a story, and I told you that time that that poem was dramatic monologue, and in which there was the King Napoleon who was directly talking to you, talking to the readers, and he was telling his own story. And the poem was beginning with the line, we French stormed the Ratisbon. This was the first line of that poem, and in which King Napoleon was telling that we attacked the city Ratisbon, that is of the city of Germany, and whatever he was thinking, he was directly talking to the reader. Robert Browning wrote that poem in first person and in the technique of dramatic monologue. So similar, we have dramatic monologue in this poem. That is the technique of composing a poem in first person, and it usually contains the story. So what is dramatic monologue? You might have understood very well. Based on Greek mythology, let me tell you the first thing that the name Ulysses, the person Ulysses, is also the part of Greek mythology. I have told you in the first part that I have no idea, no one has exact idea that what sort of person Ulysses was, or actually he existed or not existed in the past. So it is a myth, and myth is a belief but not true. So the story, the whole story and the Trojan War, they used to believe there occurred a war. The name of the war was the Trojan War. There occurred Trojan War 3000 years ago. 3000 years ago means in 12th century BC. 12th century BC. BC, before Christ. Before Jesus Christ, there occurred a war, Trojan War. So this was the war that occurred in 12th century before Jesus Christ. Before Jesus Christ means Jesus Christ, when he came, the calendar we are following started from that age. And today we have 21st century, 2020, and it shows that 2000 years already have been passed after Jesus Christ. And before Jesus Christ, if you go 1000 more back from Jesus Christ, that is called 12th century, means 1200 years before Jesus Christ, this war occurred. But actually it is based on, still this war is based on to Greek mythology. It is not the part of reality, Greek mythology. It is to the Greek myth. The people used to believe that there was once occurred the Trojan War in 12th century BC, but actually in reality it occurred or not occurred, no one has the proofs. So we have no idea that what happened in reality, but we just know that there was the war in 12th century BC. So the point need to be remembered that the Trojan War occurred in 12th century BC. The story is based on this war, and Ulysses was the person who participated in that war. So this is how we are going to talk about the poem Ulysses and the Trojan War. So all the poem, all the events, the Trojan War also and the character Ulysses also based on myth. Actually in reality we have no idea either they were or not, but people used to believe. Next point is lines taken from a two-part poem. Basically this poem Ulysses is distributed into two parts. One part, second part. In first part, he talks to his son Ulysses whenever the war ends. When the war ends, the Trojan War ends according to Greek mythology. I have told you that in 12th century BC, Trojan War occurred. When the war stopped or ended, Ulysses, the great king, returned from the war and came back to his home, and there he talked to his son. And in the first part he is talking to his son, and in the second part he is talking to his people who were with him all the time whenever he fought against the enemies throughout his life. So we are going to study lines from the poem Ulysses, that is actually from the second part. We are going to read out the lines that have been taken from the second part of the poem Ulysses, not from the first part, second part. Remember that we are going to study or read out the lines from the second part. The story taken from, now this is the important point of the poem, that we are going to study the story of Ulysses. I have told you that the story of Ulysses is based on Greek mythology. Actually it does not exist, but who wrote first the story of Ulysses? Who wrote all the things? Who wrote and who described first the Trojan War? Actually there was the poet, the name of the poet was Homer. You can Google him. He was the great poet of Greece. Poet of Greece. Homer was the great philosopher and poet of Greece. For the first time he talked about Greek mythology, about Trojan War and about Ulysses and about all the events that occurred in this war. For the first time he described in his poem Odyssey. He composed in his life two poems. The first poem was Iliad. It was the first poem and this was the second poem. In his life he composed, throughout his life he composed two poems. In first poem Iliad, the second poem is Odyssey. In first poem Iliad he talks about the Trojan War. Homer was the great poet and philosopher of Greece, and for the first time he composed a poem Iliad in his life, and throughout his life he composed two poems. First is Iliad and second is Odyssey. In first poem he talks about the Trojan War and Odyssey. In the second poem he talks about the events that happened to Ulysses, the glorious and the bravery of Ulysses. He talks about in the second poem Odyssey. In his life he composed only two poems. And remember, we are studying the poem Lines from Ulysses. Nowadays we call the name Ulysses. I have told you that Ulysses was the king, but in modern language we are calling him, he was Ulysses, but actually his name was not Ulysses. His name was different than Ulysses. In Greek language they used to call him, I have written Odysseus. It is the name of Ulysses original. This name is his first name that was spoken in Greek language. The people of Greece used to call Ulysses Odysseus. Odysseus was the actual and original name of Ulysses. Odysseus is spoken in Greek, but when the Latin appeared, they changed the name Ulysses, and still nowadays in modern English we still call him Ulysses. But the people of Greece used to call him Odysseus. His original name was Odysseus, but nowadays we call him Ulysses. So this poem is Odyssey, or some people call this poem Odyssey or Odyssey. Odyssey poem contains the story of Ulysses that was composed by Homer for the first time, and he was the poet of Greece, and he wrote this poem more than 2500 years ago. Means it is also the part of past, before Christ, and he wrote the poem of Odyssey that tells the story of Ulysses, means that tells the story of Odysseus. The next point is the event was occurred in the Trojan War. Why we are studying Ulysses? Because the war occurred in all the events that occurred in Trojan War. The main character of the war was Ulysses. So actually we are talking about Ulysses, that is the part of Trojan War. Ulysses participated in the Trojan War. Ulysses fought in the Trojan War, and he left the war and went back to home, and then he came back once again. And when he came back, whatever he talks to his people, his mariners, we are going to read out all his speech in the third part of this poem, and then I will read out the text for you, and I will tell you Ulysses, by which way Ulysses urges his people and forces his people to go for a long voyage once again. So this is how this part ends, and at the last of this part I am going to talk about themes. We have two themes in this part, in this poem. The first theme is optimism, the second theme is heroism. What is optimism? Positivity. When you keep positivity in your brain and you try to think that everything is going to be fine, all right, that is called optimism. And heroism, I have told you in the poem Samson Agonistes that what is heroism. Heroism is saving other lives without taking care of your own life, sacrificing your life and saving others' life. This is called heroism. So I hope you have understood this lecture. I have told you the background of the poem, and very briefly I have taught you all the basic points of the poem. In the third part of the poem, I will talk about the text. I will read out the text that will be for you, and I will explain you the meanings of the difficult words. I will analyze all the lines step by step. So you need to connect with the third part, otherwise you will not be able to understand complete poem. So I hope you will be studying very well, and I'll be back with the next lecture. Till then, take care. Goodbye.